got a packed agenda, so I will call this meeting to order. Up first, the long-term financial plan. No, the on-air light isn't on. Do you assume that we're on air? Oh, please.
I'm glad you looked. I wouldn't.
Oh, like I'm just reading it and.
Make sure the on-air light is on.
Yes,
it is on.
Oh, it's on. Okay. Okay. Just in case we were truly not on air, I will call the meeting to order again. Up first tonight is the long-term financial plan kickoff update 2024 through 2033. Ms. Schutte.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, tonight is just a quick look back on a refresher on the long-term financial plan. So let's just get into it. So before this refresher, I just want you guys to be thinking about is there anything that should be included in the current plan that has not been discussed? I'm going to repeat these questions to you at the end so that you don't think I'm just being weird here. What do you see as the biggest challenge in the current plan? And then other general observations or comments to share. And then the purpose of this is just to refresh the council on the 2023 long-term financial plan and then just to receive guidance as we're really jumping into the plan this week and we'll be working on it as the months come. So just want to get some guidance and then refresh everybody on where we're at. So just to share our timeline with you guys, we have already jumped in. We've given staff the current list, had them start brainstorming on their needs, and we will be having a second meeting. And everything in the green is something that staff is required by city staff. And then on Thursday, we actually have our project management team kickoff meeting, and that is where we will be meeting with Northland Securities, who will be doing our long-term financial plan modeling. And so we'll be talking about our beginning assumptions and different things like that. And then they will continue to develop our model for us. And then as information comes in, as our audit gets finalized, that information actually gets put into the model. And then that brings us down into July, the data input. Final changes are due from the department heads in August. And then this will be a little bit later than you're used to, but we'll be looking in October to present the final draft to the city council. So 2024 work plan. As I mentioned, we have a new vendor. It's Northland Securities. What I like about them, I think I mentioned, is that they are developing a very large model that moving forward, I will have control over to enter assumptions and moving forward. So I'm really excited about this. It's a really great learning opportunity as well as it gives us a little bit more control over our data and just knowing models and you know what if scenarios and different things like that. And then as Courtney had mentioned, we're moving from 5-year plan to 10-year plan. So we have a further lookout for utility rate planning. It also allows us to prepare for capital purchases that we might know about now, 10 years down the road, 15 years, and actually this model will allow us to go over 10 years as well. So that's pretty exciting. We're going to be reviewing our existing plan, which is capital assets and improvements, and staff has been provided with justification worksheets. So just because you need something, we also need to know why do you need it, how much is it, what's the expected life of this asset or repair. And we also need to update our pricing. So what something cost last year might not be what it's going to cost this year or next year or in 5 years. As you all know, inflation and different things like that have driven up a lot of the prices. And then operating components. We're looking for evaluating scheduling updates, entering current financial data. We'll be looking at staffing and different things like that. So 2023-2027 plan assumption recap. So this is where we were at in our last plan. We had 100, one of our assumptions was 100 new home builds. And then to increase operating expenses for 2023 by 7% and then 3% thereafter. We will be collecting $320,000 for street maintenance levy. And then the enterprise rate increases of 3%, 3%, and 5%. And we were not planning on any new debt service in 2023. Here's a slide that I've shared in the past. These are top capital improvements by cost per our long-term financial plan. So as you can see there, we were planning on a Southwest Service Area Trunk extension at 4.2 million, all the way down to a well 1 and 3 generator control upgrades in 2024 at 500,000. So we're not only talking capital assets on the long-term plan, we're also talking tax impact, tax rates, everything that encompasses operations and rates. So here is the tax impact, the projected rates, and the tax impact on the average valued home. And these are just estimates based on our current long-term plan. So for 2022, on just the city tax portion now, the projected tax impact would be $1,553. This year it was $1,524, and then for 2027, with the current data that we have, we would be estimating $1,519.
So that includes assumptions like the public services storage building, but probably not the service area trunk extension.
Well, that's not paid through property taxes.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, so this includes everything that's paid for
Through the general
through
fund.
the general fund?
Yep.
Okay,
In the current plan.
In the
which
current plan.
We'd be updating.
right, but it's pretty much in line, at least for the next couple of years. Okay. I was gonna say, I like that graph, I like
Yeah.
how it goes down, I like how it remains relatively stable. When you're looking at it, the lowest to the highest is $200.
Right.
And that's fairly stable.
That's what you.
One of the things when we were doing the strategic planning, we talked about trying to get taxes to remain, or this levy rate to be even throughout the years and try to avoid swings, right? Because that is always concerning to residents, going up, going down, right? Having that stabilization, I can't remember the word we used, but something like that,
Yes.
of the tax rate was really important. So I know we're still gathering all the data, but that would be awesome to be able to see us really stabilize it over the forecasted period.
Yes. I completely agree with you, and that brings me to this slide. So if you want to offer that as an observation or a comment to share with staff, I was, speaking with our municipal advisor, who's also going to be helping me with that model, and that is an assumption that you can use. We don't want this rate to go over this percentage as we model out over the next 10 years. And then, so to do that, what does our levy look like? Or
Where do we need to shift
Yes.
things, or what does that look like?
Yeah,
That would
so
be
it's-
great.
It's kind of exciting. So. I know, how can finance be so exciting?
I'd love to see you get so excited about your job and all this stuff. I truly love it.
So anyway, so after this refresher, I want to ask if there's anything that should be included in the current plan that hasn't been discussed, anything that's come to mind since we maybe did our strategic planning, or what do you see as the biggest challenges right now in the current plan, and then other observations or comments that you have that you'd like to share.
All right, so I think in the past, we've just kind of taken them one by one and gone around the room. So starting with, is there anything that should be included in the plan that has not been discussed? Joey.
The only thing I would encourage as staff is reviewing the long-term financial plan. We just put together a strategic plan. If there are any items in there that are aligned to that strategic plan, it would be good to note those. Not a requirement, but it would be good to understand that, like where we are maybe investing in certain areas aligned to that strategic plan.
That's all I have. Lori?
I have a question on slide 6 for the street maintenance, and it might just be that I forget why we only go up to 2027. Is it that by then we have the funding figured out and we're caught up?
So the street maintenance will continue to increase. So this year it's going to be $320,000. Next year it will be $420,000 that we'll levy for. It continues until $620,000, and then I believe the council has agreed that.
So it's more the dollar amount, not the number of years.
Yes.
The plan only goes out to 2027 now.
Okay.
So when we add to 10 years, you'll keep seeing it, but that number will stay static.
At $620,000 once we hit
Okay.
that amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Unless a different decision is made down the road.
Okay. No, that was the only thing.
I don't have anything that needs to be added. That's not because I think anything does. This is just the result of a number of discussions we've already had
Mhm.
about this, so I see this as the final result. So I don't have anything to add for that
Okay.
reason.
And the only thing that I had was, and maybe we're looking at bigger money amount items, but the thing I don't see on here are kind of building maintenance items. So someday, probably not in the next 10 years, but certainly some of our other facilities will need new roofs and boilers and HVAC and windows and doors and all that kind of stuff. And I want to make sure that we have a water heater fund for those and that that's not going to catch us off guard. And then also, and I think I'm getting ahead of us a little bit, but I think that we had previously talked about savings so that we don't have to do equipment certificates in the future. So that is something that I would like to see added in there.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about that?
Yep.
Is that not included in the or change from 5 to 10-year funding?
Not really, so
Okay,
So our strategy hasn't really been to build a capital equipment fund in the past. So that would be one of our maybe strategic plan initiatives or even a different council initiative is to kind of grow a capital improvement plan fund. Just similar to how we're doing the street maintenance fund and we're putting money away each year for that. It would be similar to that. We would be, say, we're gonna dedicate $100,000 every year toward capital equipment fund.
so the next item on our agenda, the big new machines we're looking at buying.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So we don't run into that every 5
No,
years.
I understand that. I think when we were talking about the new roof for the fire station and the AC units and all of that, I thought part of that planning, we were thinking about those kind of things in the 5 to 10 year, but I just wanted clarification.
And just a little amendment to that, so kind of getting that feedback earlier, the team has been working on that strategy in advance. So using the pavement management plan as a model, we're looking at adding a fund and a plan for trails, a fund and a plan for facilities, which would include maintenance, and a fund and a plan for park equipment. So like think of community park playground. So it'll all be contained within, we'll do a 20-year outlook, 10 of it in the plan, but then some real teeth gnashing on like, well, some stuff might have to get pushed back based on, how you want that tax rate to be impacted. If you want it to be relatively the same, maybe a fluctuation of what we're talking of 2 to 3%, well then that's where the council comes in to make some choices on what gets pushed back. Are we concentrating more on streets than trails or park equipment versus facilities? So there'll be some harder decisions to make, but you'll have all the information you hopefully need to make those.
And I'll get better at understanding the classes, so.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's like a puzzle.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, anything else on that one, on number 1? Or is there anything that should be included in the current plan that has not been discussed? Okay.
Can I
You
just
may.
give a little commercial too for,
Yep.
so one of the things that kind of that does align with the strategic plan is talking about staffing, and at some point in the future, we'll do a staffing study, but that takes time and costs. But we do think that we have some ingredients to, I would say, do a moderately significant overhaul to how we were thinking about staffing. I'll give an example that Chad and I have been talking about, and I talked to Courtney a little bit about it last week, but just thinking about the number of shutdowns or disruptions to services that was identified in the strategic plan. One of the things that we look at with our team is, so, Chad has all the certificates and licenses related to public utilities, and Brett Mikolajczyk as Public Services Tech 1 has that as well. And then we have a couple of folks that are kind of in the midst of training. Russ Carver just got his first license. So we're capable, but I would say the headline is we have a relatively short bench, meaning that if someone goes on vacation, if Brett Mikolajczyk goes on vacation, it's really all out on Chad's shoulders to work with our young and up and comers to maintain what we all know to be a significant and impactful utility system. And so we think there's a space to add a leadership position in utilities to make sure that, that we have a built-in suspenders approach to pump maintenance and other types of annual maintenance that will decrease our likelihood of having service disruptions. It doesn't mean it ends it entirely, but we do think that through the strategic plan and kind of what this council has discussed, that there is kind of, without saying it directly, there's kind of a want and a need to say like, well, let's add some leadership and experience to that rather than maybe hiring another entry-level position in utilities, but to hire someone with more experience, more leadership that doesn't put all that pressure on Chad if someone goes on vacation or has a parental leave, etc. So those are the types of things, think about that organization-wide that we're thinking about or will be thinking about as we come into this next plan update.
I think you should just cross-train city council.
Yes.
I want to do the snow plowing. I want to do the mowing.
Who's gonna do the wastewater? Anybody?
That's an
Okay,
interesting tour.
moving on to number 2, what do you see as the biggest challenge in the current plan? Do you wanna go reverse? Mary Kay can go first.
So, I don't know that I can intelligently speak to that, but the question I had is was this all based on an average of 100 new rooftops per year?
For this year.
Okay, just for this year.
Yeah. And then I
So,
believe it increases a little bit for 2024.
so as we talked about other communities that have had contraction in building, we don't think we're in that position, right? Just based on all of the conversations we've
Yeah,
had with
100,
developers.
100 felt conservative and comfortable for us, so I'd say we're in a good spot with 100. Realistically, I think we could probably push higher, but you never want to aim too high.
I think that's consistent with how we've handled it in the past. We've been a little bit conservative and that served us well.
Lori?
Biggest challenges, so just to confirm, so with the CIP, it's what comes into the city as revenue from residents for property tax. And,
It's kind of both. I mean,
Okay.
it's also, what do the water and sewer departments need
Okay.
as well? So,
okay, but from residents between water, even though, and it can only be
Yes.
used for water, sewer, and,
Yes.
okay.
yes.
I was gonna ask just about like state funding, but that's different. So that doesn't apply here.
Well, there's some state funding that
Because
will
for the
be
streets.
revenue offsets, so
Yes.
like Lynn's model will show like state aid and how that helps other pieces. So
You know,
the way that I like to think about it is the plan is basically everything that we need in general and utilities. And then Lynn applies, assumptions on housing, water, sewer connections, tax rates. And based on that, it'll spit out what you need for tax rate, what you need for water and sewer rates. And then it fluctuates based on how aggressive you want to be or how conservative you want to be.
but just if whatever the state gives for funding, whether it be the state aid for roads, just that 9-10 years, we just have the risk of not knowing.
Right. So we just have
I
to,
just see that as a challenge.
yes.
And then the other thing, not like anything negative, but just trying to think 9-10 years. But I feel like within the council, we have a lot of collaboration and the street maintenance, we're all in agreement. Just statistically, it's hard to imagine that all 5 of us will still be in the decision-making roles. So that's a challenge, but out of our control too.
I don't know that I necessarily see the biggest challenges. I mean, I think a big challenge is to kind of keep that tax rate stable, right? Even though, this plan is only a couple of years that you included with all the details in there, there's still a lot of stuff in here, and I know there's way more. When we look at the 10-year, right? Trying to figure out how to keep that rate stable, I think that's always our challenge, I think.
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of the crystal ball stuff, like knowing, are assumptions correct? Are we gonna continue to have development? Is the Southwest trunk utility extension gonna work, and will we start growing in that direction? So for me, and this isn't tangible and it's anything, but it's just really nailing it down. I do like the idea of you being able to kind of move around the deck chairs in this plan at some point, so that we can say on a Tuesday or on a Monday night, what would it look like if this, and then you can get that back to us a little bit quicker and more real time. So Finally, other general observations or comments to share with staff. Where you want to go first?
I don't have anything. I like the consistency that I'm looking at the long-term financial plan. Just, it's becoming so familiar, just the colors, the arrangement, it's helping me just be more familiar with it. But no, I feel like this is helping us. And also just knowing that we originally talked about it in April and in October, things will be presented to us to make a decision.
Yes.
It's good.
Joy?
Did we always have a fire capital fund? Did I just miss it on the previous one?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of, it hasn't held a lot.
Expenditures
Right.
in that column? Okay,
Yes.
maybe that's why I hadn't noticed it before. No, I like that we're segregating these different funds and planning that way. I really like that. And especially we're gonna have some more columns on this spreadsheet, it sounds like. That's good. Okay. Nothing else for me.
The only is just feedback. I really appreciate you taking all of us through, step by step through the meetings we've had. At least from my understanding of this, it is helping me put together the financial puzzle of the city. So I appreciate all of the work you've done to do that.
My feedback was just kind of Brent foreshadowed, I think maybe what I was saying, but as far as the staffing, 2027 seems like a really long time to wait for a communicator. And you know my background, so you know that I'm biased and I know the value that that role can bring. So that would be nice to shift up if we can. I also wonder, we don't need more of a parking lot, if you will, for something that's 11 years out or 15 years out, just to demonstrate that we know that City Hall is going to need a roof in 2052, and that's a ridiculous example, but just the stuff that's kind of just beyond our scope of time frame. So, and then maybe it's included in the pavement management plan, but I'm sorry, going back to number one, will road improvements be included in this, or would that be part of the pavement management plan? And I'm sorry, I'm thinking specifically for the former county road.
It's in there already.
It's in there already? Okay. That answers some questions. Right. Did you get what you needed from us?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, the 2024 equipment certificate. That's good enough.
So, thank you, Mayor. So, tonight I want to open up discussion on the equipment certificate for the Public Services Department. Some things I'd like to cover tonight, excuse me, would be equipment needs, equipment function, justification, and then the financial impact. So our first piece of equipment that we're requesting for this certificate would be a front-end loader, estimated value at $382,000. The picture is our current loader, which is a 1989 Cat loader. We actually purchased this, the city purchased it in 2000 from another city, and they had it completely sandblasted, repainted, reconditioned, and now it is 34 years old, almost 9,000 hours of work on it, and it is operational, but not reliable, not dependable. This piece of equipment is super critical for snowplow operations. It's a large piece of equipment, so it can push a lot of snow. So we use it for our downtown cleanup, called SAC cleanup in parking lots, and then we also use it during season where there's a lot of snow. We go out benching, which just pushes that snow back a little bit, back of curb, and allows the next snowfall to accumulate back at curb, which is called benching. For summer operations, again, being a large piece of equipment, we use it for grading or moving large amounts of material. And it's also extremely efficient at loading trucks, usually 3 or 4 scoops, and that's about 8 ton. Some of the issues that we've had with the Cat loader, when you're 34 years old, you're gonna leak some fluid, hydraulic fluid, oil. A lot of the hydraulic hoses are still the original, so We replace those kind of on an as-needed basis, but some of the notable pieces is just the corrosion. There's a lot of, what you can see is frame corrosion. This little section here is the battery box, which we've had kind of remanufactured a couple of times on both sides. And this, we still are sporting the old Carver logo, the water tower on there. The picture on the left, so this is how operators enter the piece of equipment. They climb up a ladder, and this is the platform. I noticed this end of season, we kind of check over everything, and we're going to get that replaced here shortly. So again, if this piece of equipment would go down, we would, a snow event would last probably a day or two longer just to get everything cleaned up, so it's very critical. The second piece of equipment is the 1-ton plow truck, estimated value at $100,000. This picture is the 2013 Dodge with about 60,000 miles on it. Again, very critical for snow plow operations. We can plow and salt with this truck, and it's mostly the downtown alleys. Downtown areas, the alleys, the lots, and then utility sites kind of post-event. Once the roads are clear, then we hit the wells and the lift stations. For summer operations, the 1-ton chassis is a little bit more stable. It's a little bit sturdier. So we're pulling our mower trailers, hauling brush and materials. And then we also kind of drive it off-site to do some landscape watering. This is one of the staffers in Olson Park watering trees, so we can carry about 300 gallons of water, so we can move it to remote locations. Some of the issues that we experienced with this is just due to what we're asking the truck to do. So snow plowing operations, we're plowing into snow. Occasionally we hit a manhole or a gate valve, and we're backing up, going forward and back several times in an event. So transmission issues, drivetrain issues. There's been a few minor mechanical issues. We also realized that we have a little bit of frame and plow stress just from all the work that it's done with the so many snow events this year. Plus electrical issues, working around the snow and salt tends to corrode a lot of those electrical connectors. And the final piece of equipment that we're requesting would be the large plow truck, estimated value at $262,500. This would be an additional truck to the fleet, bringing a total to 4. These trucks are the workhorses when we're plowing roads and hauling materials. So just an updated mileage from the strategic plan, 32 miles of roads, double that, and that's our lane miles, because we do have to plow both sides of the roads. We would adjust the snow plow routes into 4 sections, with each truck plowing roughly 8 miles. And this does align with the long-term plan of adding a public services technician in 2024, and taking into account that we will be plowing Main Street West and Old Carver Road come this winter. Just a little refresher on some of the plow routes. So before we were just north and south. So everything 6th Street was north, and we've divided that up into an east and west. So everything west of JCP is that west route. East is the east route. And then the Carver Bluff and neighborhood would be our south route. We're working with the Bolton and Mink staff to figure out where some of those cutoff points would be to make 4 equal routes. So why are we talking about this? May 1st, 2023. The lead time for assembly and delivery for most of these pieces of equipment is 1 year plus. The front end loader is well over 12 months. The 1-ton plow truck currently is challenging to get chassis. And then once you do get a chassis, you have to send it off to another contractor for installation of like the dump box, the sander, the plows. And large plow truck, looking at 1 to 2 years for delivery. With our plow trucks, we have 4-wheel drive. So you buy it from one dealer, run it to a 4-wheel shop, and they install the 4-wheel drive. And then you run it to a third contractor to install the snow plows, dump box, brine system, and sanders. And as I stated earlier, this does align with our long-term plan. Public services technician scheduled in 2024. The front-end loader has kind of been in the schedule for a few years, and we feel just based on department needs that this would be the best time to purchase the loader. The large plow truck was scheduled in 2025, and again, just based on department needs and all the roads that they're putting in, a good fit. And the 1-ton truck scheduled in 2025, just with the mechanical issues of the 2013 Dodge. This would be a good fit as well. So total equipment cost, loader at $382,000, the 1-ton truck at $100,000, the fourth large snowplow truck at $262,500 with 10% contingency, just not knowing where the market's going to go in the next year or so. Total comes to $818,950. And then round numbers, Lynn, do you want to talk on this one?
Yeah, so I got some preliminary financing numbers for an equipment certificate totaling $825,000. And like Chad said, that includes 5% inflation with 10% contingency. So we can do the round numbers. The rate of 3.36% at a term of 10 years. We'd be looking at a payment of approximately $96,000 a year. So the city would levy for 85% of the annual payments, and that's the percentage of the equipment that would be allocated to the general fund, because as you know, a lot of the equipment we split between water, sewer, and the general fund. The water and sewer would be responsible for the remaining 15% of the payment, and so the impact to the average valued home, as the rates are right now, not with any, anything changing, as of right now, it would be $36.89 annually for the 10-year term.
Is that 85-50% split pretty common like for the
Yeah.
other equipment?
We do a lot of that with even our expenses, our operating expenses that we have to kind of split between the funds.
So any questions, comments, concerns?
On the existing loader,
Mm-hmm.
we get a new one. Is there any commercial value to the one we have?
Trade-in value from the cat dealer was $20,000.
If you were to ask for $20,000 to refurbish it, would it provide any use to the city in a different capacity? Would you need a second one?
We had planned on kind of using it for maybe a couple more years and then getting rid of it. There is some value to it with it running. I mean, if we run it until the wheels fall off, then it's
Right.
basically just scrapped. So,
But if you don't, if we have a new one and this is an auxiliary machine that can be retasked,
Mhm.
is it worth putting money into? Would it last another 10 years if you refurbished it? And do you need that?
possibly with the frame corrosion,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be my only concern.
That's the weak point in it?
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. But you could trade it in now for 20.
Yes.
So all of these, in the long-term plan, 2 of these items were in 24, 2 of them were in 25, so that's where they show up in your charts and whatnot. So would we be moving all of these to 24 then? Is that what we're
With
saying?
support from the council.
Okay,
yeah, so
that's the ask here, okay.
So we're kind of building the finance program for spring of '24, a year from now. Public Works Fire Station building, equipment certificate, and whatever utility program for extension of trunk lines you decide. This is kind of the framework. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
Of that
Framework.
finance.
Very clever.
Oh, my, clever, what do you have to point it out?
Oh, we could have just gone right by that.
Just trying to have some
Both of
fun.
you, I think. Is that it?
My only other comment here.
Do we need to make you scared to say anything else?
So when you talked about the plow routes and things like that, again, I think we talked in the strategic plan around kind of service levels and things like that. So I'm sure when you have kind of the details of this laid out, it'd be great to kind of understand what that impact is going to be. were all my questions.
Can I ask my fellow council members a general question?
Yeah.
As I look at this seems to be just matter of fact, we need this and you knew it was coming.
Yeah, it's always been in our long-term.
So, yeah, typically, I mean, do you really have any deliberation around this other than the funding year or?
It's more about timing, I think,
Okay.
right? You know, right, can we make it work in the long-term plan? That's what it's been about.
I think there have been times where people have questioned if the need. I think, boy, and I remember Mike Webb saying this, that we have a relationship with Brent and with Chad and with pretty much everybody who's sitting around this table that we know that they're not coming to us with need or with wants. That this is a needs list. I mean, if you look at that loader, it is
Looks like it's held together with bailing wire.
literally
Yeah.
falling apart. Like I worry about somebody stepping on that
Right.
platform and going clear through. So that's the way that I look at things, and I know that if Chad's coming to us, that it's a need.
Okay.
And this is kind of a building block to the 2024 budget.
And I echo what Mayor Johnson says, where I just have a lot of confidence too in Chad and his team. Also, I think they, over time, did really good with anticipating our questions. So a lot of that's already in the presentation. So it seems like last couple of years, there's less kind of discussion about it because we're presented with the information. They kind of know what we're gonna ask.
Yeah, I mean, my only question was around the timing change, right? Does that make sense? And I mean, if we're talking about a large plow truck and we just took back kind of 40, right? And keep adding roads, right? I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And just that from a staffing perspective, you had already planned to add another technician, right? Just because of population and size of what we need to maintain, it just makes sense.
All right, thank you. And just to be clear, that was not a question of the need. As I said, this seems pretty matter of fact to me.
Well, and that's that long-term plan to the
Yeah.
house of that we know. Just to clarify, the loader and the 1 ton are replacement for the most part.
Yes.
And then the large plow truck is in addition.
Correct.
to- Okay,
Yes.
okay, that's my only question.
I'm shocked a front end loader is more expensive than a plow
Mhm.
truck. Personally, but education for me.
Did I give everybody a chance, Lori, did you?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I have expressed them.
No concerns.
do you have what you need from us?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Up next, the draft ordinance discussion for the large event permit on the Sunset.
You're gonna think of that framework joke today, giggle probably.
Probably.
Yes, I was
I
gonna
will.
laugh and smile a little, but it's that shaking my head sideways versus the like, oh,
Yeah.
funny. Let me see, oh no.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Well, thank you,
I'm
Mayor
gonna
Johnson.
All right.
You might remember back on March 20th, I know it seems like a long time ago, and we had a lot of snow out back then. You saw the first draft of the large event permitting process and the ordinance, and Dave did a lot of background work and prep and presented the information at that time. And it's being handed over to me at this time to present to you the proposed changes that we're bringing back to you, and those were based on feedback that was received from the city council during that work session, and then also some staff changes that were identified as we worked through those changes. So I've identified there on the screen, you can see the changes that were in the council memo, and I'll just go through them. The first one there was the exception language for city events and community festivals was clarified. The provision regarding the need to obtain other required city permits or licenses was expanded to include additional examples. And the examples that were identified had to do with mobile food units and transient merchants. The language authorizing the city to impose reasonable conditions on permits was supplemented to include various examples to provide transparency and clarity. This next one, the provision about special services, was clarified to remove reference to law enforcement and fire department personnel, because those services will be the responsibility of the event organizer. And that is one that was identified by staff, and it has to do with the city is not going to be the intermediary between the event organizer, and in this example, it would be the Carver County Sheriff's Office. So we wouldn't get involved and then have them pay us, and we would reimburse the Sheriff's Office. In talking to other cities and what they do, they actually just put those two parties together and let them negotiate that. The piece that the city is involved in, as you know, will have an application form, and they have to put everything in there about their event. And then, as identified in the ordinance, the city or the department heads will go through that application and then identify, what can we provide feedback on, give recommendations for all kinds of different things, including when do they need law enforcement and so on. And then the same would be said for the fire department personnel. And then lastly, the thing that is new that you did not see the last time is we recommended a fee schedule amendment for some of the permit applications, and reimbursable special services was incorporated as well. And I actually have an example. I'll maybe take if we have any questions. Otherwise, I have an example that was in the packet where we took those proposed fees and we applied it to a real life example. So before we jump into that example, I'll just see if you had any questions about the proposed changes that we're bringing back to you at this time.
I like your example. I think that really helped me see, oh, okay, that's $250. That seems reasonable to close off a street for an example of the area of Steamboat Days.
And I can just jump ahead to that one too so we can see that there.
I did have a question. You mentioned that you changed the exception language and kind of the carve-outs. The more I think about this, I am starting to question, and let me get to the right page, why we have a carve-out for Steamboat Days. Because it seems like this is probably stuff that they're doing already. I would certainly want to make sure that they have the insurance that's required of everybody else. I think it would be nice to take the city out as the intermediary with the sheriff's department. I just wanted to see kind of what everybody else thought about that. The other thing is that all the other examples, the fire department's annual open house, Night to Unite, those are things that the city sponsors. The city is involved with those, right? Steamboat Days is a completely separate group, and while they forever and ever had the city's blessing, it's an outside group. So I think that they should be covered by this policy.
Is it though? Is it
No,
it
they're
really?
part of the carve-out.
I know my question was, are they truly a separate entity? Is it not? I mean, what is the city's role in Steamboat Days? And the carve-out says that these are things that are organized and facilitated by the city or in conjunction with the city. Does it still meet that requirement, or is it really Steamboat Days is a totally separate organization? I don't know. I'm asking the city.
Yeah, I'd say it's a totally separate organ. I mean, it's run by the Lions. The Steamboat Days Committee is an arm of the Lions Club, so I believe they're members and non-members on the Steamboat Days Committee.
Okay.
The city's involvement has traditionally, at least I would say the last 5 years, has been to pay for the law enforcement coverage, and then I would say there's a significant role that Chad and his team in public services plays with barricades and just kind of, I would call it kind of festival ground loose ends, not necessarily doing all the work, but helping to coordinate, or there's some storage of some festival materials that are brought out. There are picnic tables that are brought down, so there would be some additional cost, not only for sheriff's coverage, but then think of you probably want to add picnic table. You might add picnic tables and signs, and so.
So if the carve-out didn't include steamboat days, would the city be donating? I mean, how would it work? If we were gonna provide similar support?
Yeah, I don't know, I'd leave it to Dave to maybe just define it, but I would say that all those things are occurring now at no
Right.
charge.
At no charge, right?
Correct.
Which, I mean, cities do have some authority. Generally, cities don't have the ability to donate money to organizations, but cities do have statutory authority to donate to community festivals.
Okay,
Things, I mean, all cities, many cities, not all,
for sure.
have, their annual steamboat days, like Carver has, they call them different things, and they're done different weekends. But there's some room for that in the statute, and I've always kind of, and maybe this is a little bit of a learning experience for me too, hearing this discussion, because it's always seemed to me as somewhat of a community festival that the city has in part been a part of and sponsored to an extent, just through those services, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the way we treat it. And if the reality is, the majority of the planning and the costs and everything is being handled by a separate entity, and we can take that out of the exception language and make that clear that just like any other special event or large event, steamboat days will have to come in and get a large event permit as well. Kind of depends on where you want to draw the line, and this might be the point of making that decision for at least the short term and potentially long term. Just given the discussion we're having around this ordinance.
Would the council be amenable to just pushing this to the next work session? I feel like there's gonna be a lot of translation and kind of up to speed conversation I'd have to have with Councilmember Mock on this. And I think the conversation can be had, but it might be best in a work session rather than having it at the regular meeting where you're trying to decide and build it. But again, that's just a suggestion if you want to
Yeah,
say,
I
hey,
mean,
let's go for it.
Kind of what I would like to have for that discussion is kind of a comparison, right? Today, right, if we carve out steamboat days, this is what the city does, right? This is what the Lions or the Steamboat Committee does, right? And then if we were not gonna carve it out, what does that look like, right?
We could do
So that would be good to have a comparison because I'm sure Christy probably can see those things because she's really familiar with it, but I can't, so that would be helpful.
Does it even have support to go down that path? Are you interested in exploring it further? It sounds like you may be.
I mean, I guess I'd like to be educated
Yeah.
a little bit more, right? I mean, I think I hear your concern about, are they pulling permits? Are they doing the same things that we're asking other large events to do? I don't know, right? And so it'd be good to kind of say, here's what the current state is with the carve out. Here's what Steamboat Days Committee does. Here's what the city does. And then if we were to not carve them out, what would they have to do differently?
I can see a desire to apply an equal standard to all of these kind of events. And you mentioned the insurance coverage, so being sure that the event is also covered in that respect. But I agree that I would have to see that comparison and impact to the Steamboat Days Committee if they didn't have the carve out to be able to make a decision.
It would, we probably would need more than just like 2 weeks, probably need a month or two, because for an example, like the garbage service is embedded into the city's regular pickup contract, and so need to work with Chad and my vendor to determine what percentage of the city's contract is related to steamboat days, so we can pull that back out. Maybe we can get the sheriff's office coverage just because that's in, but we're probably using every barricade that we have for that, so.
Right, right. I mean, it sounds a lot like the city is very involved, right, in supporting it very actively. But again, I don't know what the difference would be. If we could still, if the city can still support it, just in a different way.
Is there any liability if we didn't mandate that Steamboat Days was didn't have to go through this process? Because, I mean, would we be showing some kind of favoritism if we didn't?
I'm not concerned about that. I mean, again,
Okay.
this is not something that's out of the ordinary. Many cities do it, and you have the ability and authority to spend money on these things. Legally, liability, I mean, we have insurance that covers, the use of city parks and city streets and city sidewalks for these. But that said, I mean, there may be a reason to bring it sort of into this umbrella, not only because of the size of the event, but just for uniformity and frankly, I don't think bringing Steamboat Days into this framework, I'll use Brent's favorite word of the day, is going to be.
I gotta laugh.
Nobody expects me to make a joke. I think staff is so familiar with this event that it would be, it would just be something that could very simply become sort of enveloped in this large event application fee and review, and it's not like a brand new event we'd be looking at for the first time. I think city staff knows exactly what they need. They know what they need. Law enforcement knows. The barricades are all familiar at street closures, and so the only thing that's probably worth looking at, and this is what I think it's going to take Brent some time or staff some time to figure out, is what does it mean financially for the two parties? Because the city has been providing some of those things or all those things for the last probably forever. I don't know how long this has happened, but
70s.
yeah.
1900s.
Decades.
And that's okay if the council is okay with it.
Right.
So.
I had some questions, and I don't need the answers today, but then I'm in favor of revisiting this. But then these might be things to come back. I'm looking at who's gonna get these answers? Sorry, but the public service labor, I'm surprised that there isn't a minimum, of how many hours. So that's just more of a comment. I don't know if it's something you wanna add.
And yes, and that's why I put estimate there and talking
Okay.
with Chad. This example is based on, if you remember, there was a resolution because of the street closure, and that's why this particular event needs to have a permit, a large event permit,
Yeah.
because the streets are being closed. It's the motorcycle run basically that's
Yeah.
happening this weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a good example to use
Okay.
since
For sure.
at that time we were exempting Steamboat Days, so we didn't even think about
Okay.
using that. I just thought this was a good example, very recent example.
But
Talking to.
I wasn't the dollar amount, it was just if somebody really only 1 hour, we're gonna have somebody work Saturday for 1 hour.
And-
Typically there'd be
yeah.
like a X number hour minimum, whatever you place that to be.
And that's why I put estimate there, it's
Okay.
more the hour or the dollar amount per hour, and then we'd have to figure out when they actually submit the permit, then we would do that calculation, go through the process of saying, well, how long is it really gonna take? What are you asking for? And then we'd follow the fee structure when they have to pay, the 50% down
Okay.
and so forth, so we would follow that. So-
And then I had a question on the color coding with whether it needs to be detour sign, detour road. Who decides that? Would the applicant come in and say, I want this closed, no, please don't put a barricade there? Or, I would think it would be both parties, but just to have that uniformity, who says, no, this is how we do it?
Yeah, in this case, this was my first time being involved with it, and so we didn't have an application
Yeah.
form, so there were some emails back and forth, some phone calls identifying what are they asking for. They've also done this event in the past, so they were very familiar
Okay.
with what they wanted to have done. Then I worked with Chad, how do we make this happen? Where's the detour going to be? What kind of barricades or signs do we need? And that was based on that.
Okay.
So this is, I think, a much
They would
different
apply
process,
and whether or
yes.
not you accept it. Okay.
Yes. And we would have the opportunity to comment back on that application form.
And we get some feedback from the fire department as well, just to make sure that they're comfortable with it and they know the routes. So.
Okay, all right. Yeah, as far as the Steamboat Days, I would support the city paying for the garbage, I don't really know who paid for Southwest Trans.
It's donated.
That's donated, okay. Just, kind of two things. I've not had anyone complain and say, those are my tax dollars. So I feel like there'd be more complaints of, I can't believe the city charged, or, oh, the wristband fee went up. Well, that's because the city charged more. So I just feel.
But it's not like using this as an example.
Yeah.
It's not like $50,000 that we're talking about.
True, yeah.
Right.
So I think that would be.
$250.
Yeah.
Like.
No, but
Even if it's double that,
Yeah.
they're getting that in a, and it's not our job to figure out their finances, but I just,
True, it would be
I
nice
worry
to.
about that, treating everyone
Yeah.
equally.
It would be nice to see an example of what this would cost,
Yeah.
that committee.
Well, I think that's maybe double that with a few more barricades, but, Vicki, or maybe it was Brent mentioned picnic tables that we bring down for the Steamboat Days Committee. Is that something that needs to be added to this fee schedule? That's something that's available for rent for all? And it might not be.
Yeah, I mean, that would be good feedback if like a motorcycle rally wanted extra picnic tables. Right now, the response would be, we don't provide additional tables, but if you wanted to provide that service, kind of in the same, so you can give us the feedback to include that, but for example, the fire department, we're taking a position that we're not going to like hire out people to work events that are like city staff. So that's why you don't see the fire department listed. The sheriff's office, we can help them coordinate, but we're not gonna say we need 3 people to work the fun run on, the 3rd.
Yeah.
They might have to have some additional personnel if the fire department wants to volunteer for certain things. It'll be kind of on a case-by-case basis, but I think Lauren kind of mentioned this, but there will eventually be some kind of consternation between groups on this. So like on Steamboat Days, 6 or 7 years ago, the festival kind of almost went under, and there was some disagreement between the committee and the city about the level of law enforcement coverage. And what amplified that was some Steamboat Committee members at the time were unhappy with like the level of coverage provided by the sheriff's office. And so in an effort to kind of help revive the Steamboat Days group and then to just say like the city's controlling, like we're not going to argue with you about how many people we need for coverage. The city decided, or the council at the time decided to take ownership of that. It's up to the council now based on what today is. If you want to continue to do that, we can get you the numbers to help you make that choice.
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about the cost to the Lions, it's not gonna be $250 or whatever. They're gonna have to cover garbage, because the city's covering that. They're gonna have to cover sheriffs, city's covering that.
You're probably looking at like $7,500 if I was to like venture.
It's a lot more significant, I
Yeah,
think.
you're right.
Yeah, so, I think we're all saying that we want the city to still invest in this community festival the way that we are doing today. I'm sure it's not a huge amount to the city, but it's important to keep this festival going, and we want to be committed to that. But I also hear what you're saying about being fair to.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then we don't need staff to go through this exercise, right? So I don't want to
Oh.
needlessly throw work on their plates if I'm the only one. I'm fine with being the only one who feels this way.
But I think I heard Dave say that, okay, so if we were gonna not carve out for Steamboat Days, right? And Steamboat Days was gonna have to do everything just like everything, the city could still donate, right?
We could still.
Some of the same
Yeah.
things we're doing today to the Lions or the Steamboat Committee.
Yeah, that's the carve out.
I
And then
think
it continues the way it's always been.
what the suggestion might be is still require them to apply, get a permit, go through the whole application process, but the city could still exercise that legislative authority to make expenditures that are related to the community
Right.
event. So they wouldn't necessarily bear the entire burden of the cost, they being Steamboat Days, but they still would have to jump through the same hoops that.
Got it. Sorry if that's what you were saying.
That's what I
didn't-
saw.
Thank you for
That's
translating.
what I saw,
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I saw. Kind of a, right, so the city's still supporting and committing to support it the way that we are doing today. However, the Steamboat Days Committee still has to apply, and they're still part of that process that we're outlining here.
But doesn't this read that they would have to apply?
No.
I'm
It's
sorry,
about-
a large event is not required for, so they
No.
would not apply.
No,
As it's currently written.
this is currently written.
Just unsolicited feedback with that, like, from a staff perspective, if you wanna carve them out, then carve them out all the way, but like if you, making them apply for a permit for things that they're already doing and conversations they already have is kind of make work for staff, we're already doing those things, it's gonna add a level of bureaucracy for us that I don't think it'll slow us down rather than help us help them.
You're saying by having them go through this process, it's gonna add work for you?
I'm saying that if you're gonna include them with everybody else, then have them go, like, they're paying the fees, they're doing everything else, because to like remember, like, okay, on this one, we're not gonna charge them that, like, it just adds a lot more process. So either include them or just keep it as written and carve them out and.
Then I would say my vote would be to carve them out. It made sense to have everybody following a standardized procedure, but if we have to keep making exceptions and exceptions because we've put them through this standardized application and that's gonna create more work for you, why would we do that?
Because the application just gets them
This isn't onerous,
To
the
cre-
cost isn't
to-
onerous.
to create the plan that we're already, like, the Steamboat Days isn't changing significantly from year to year. We're still requiring them to list the city as an additional insured. They go through the liquor license process, so like having them fill out an application. I think it'd be helpful for the council to clarify that it's just a carve out for Steamboat Days, because what will be helpful, like a challenge for Vicky and her team is if it's like, well, does that apply to the Easter egg hunt? Does that apply to Soggy Bottom? And the way that I'm reading it, you're just carving out Steamboat Days. And again, if you wanna like,
Well, and, Night to Unite.
but that's a city event.
Okay.
That's, exclusively.
True, but you still have to.
Right, but I think what they're saying is the whole reason we were putting this large event permitting thing in place is because we didn't have anything, right, for new events that were coming to town, and we wanted to have a much more structured process and fee schedule and everything like that, so that we can support them well, right? We want those things to happen in our community, and we want to be able to execute it well. We're already executing Steamboat Days, the fire department annual open house, the Night to Unite. We're already doing that stuff. I think that's what you're saying, Brent. It's kind of like they've already been permitted. Steamboat Days.
Steamboat Day, like, well, what this ordinance would do is just make sure that what it really does do is making sure that whoever's holding the event is communicating with us, and that we can charge them for our time, or for the city's time. But if you're not interested in charging for the city's time, like law enforcement and garbage, then, ultimately, we'll do what the council wants, but at face level, I don't see a lot of value in doing that.
And to your point too, I think you're already communicating with Steamboat Days. There's no issue there. There's no communication issue. There's no
No problem to
reason
solve.
to push them into that
Yeah.
process when they're already.
But if there's a fundamental, like, the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for X, Y, and Z, like, this would be a vehicle to say, like, okay, they need to be treated like everybody else, and then that exercise, I think, would be helpful to the council. That's, I think, the big policy question.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the city changing its support for Steamboat Days. And I don't want to have work.
I'm not either. If we already have a carve out, now that we've gone through this exercise, I would agree that this makes a lot of sense for anything new coming into the city.
I just have one question for Dave. So you're comfortable with Steamboat Days for what they provide for insurance?
Yeah, they have to get a liquor license, and through that process, they're required to get liquor liability insurance.
Okay.
The city's grounds, all of our infrastructure and everything else, we're already covered through the league. Now we have good insurance and liability limits on, tortious conduct and all that stuff. So I'm not worried about city liability as it, pertains to the status quo we've always been doing. Does that answer?
It does,
the
yeah, and then
question?
I'm comfortable with the carve-out for steamboat days. And I would have to say, I like that this idea of anyone new coming in, that they have to apply for the permit within 20 days. 'Cause I think then that stops this, like, oh, this weekend, we're doing this.
No. Okay, yeah. So then with that, do we have any other comments? Because I think we are good to move forward with this.
Can I just ask one clarifying question?
Yeah.
Are you also carving out, I heard some talk about Soggy Bottom. Are you carving that out too? Because Brent was saying we want to specifically state Steamboat Days as being carved out?
No,
We're not.
Okay.
We're not carving it out.
Okay,
anymore.
okay, so just Steamboat
I lost
Days.
that one.
Okay.
Yes, just Steamboat Days is in the carve out. Yeah. Any other?
Just a follow-up, is there, even though it would be a permit, is there, I'm feeling like I'm hearing, like, is there a mechanism where the council wants to review or have like a greater oversight on steamboat days? Is that like the?
Not for me.
Not for me, I got educated tonight.
Okay,
For me, I was just viewing it through a lens of treating all events the same.
okay.
That's it.
Okay, is there any other feedback for Vicky? Because I think the next step is to see this, to approve it at a council meeting.
Looks good.
Nothing else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry to took a while to get
No,
there.
that was a great discussion.
Okay, moving on to the city manager's report. Mr. Merrick.
See if I can get, stick framework into this.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Years over. That was
nobody else.
Okey doke. So, a lot of stuff going on, so, Chad and his team have already started some preliminary work on getting the parking lot area striped down at Main and Broadway. They're looking at doing it in two parts, I would call it the east side and the west side, the week of May 8th. We talked earlier today about just doing some knock and talks with the Hartleys and Getaway Motor Cafe. But just wanted to give council that update if there's any other things you want to add to that, Chad.
We've already shared this with them though, right? They're aware of this?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's just more of a, hey, this is gonna happen next week.
Yep, we'll do layout this week, again with a reminder, and then project next week.
So, the next piece, the Public Utilities Emergency Response Plan, so the concept for this idea came from, I even hate to say it, but the water pressure issue that we had last, or it'll be a year ago on Father's Day, June 19th. So, as you know, there was a lot of staff time and a lot of kind of coordination that was kind of done, I would say almost on the design build, trying to figure out where different things were, and so, we debriefed a number of times after the issue was kind of resolved. And one of the things that we identified as a team was a need to develop a stronger set of protocols and process related to how we're going to respond. So who identifies the issue, what role do they have, who do they call, how is information relayed, how are problems identified, analyzed, assessed. And so our utilities team, which is Chad and Aaron and Lynn, and some of our techs and our engineering team, they put together, I just reviewed it when they were done, but a public utilities emergency response plan. So I'll pass this around. It's got phone numbers and a flow chart, but within the context of it, you'll see zoom ins on different locations where certain infrastructure is located and processes related to what to do with infrastructures under certain, or infrastructure pieces under certain conditions, where they're located and how they interconnect with one another. But it's really the collection of a lot of data and putting it into one place that's easily accessible and is almost kind of turnkey, that if any one of us walked in the door, at least we'd have an ability to say, this person needs to be called, and this thing needs to be done. Chad and Aaron Schmidt, anything that you can add to that you think might be helpful for the council?
Well, just we'll have those books, obviously, that the utilities team can have in the truck with them at all times. We're even thinking about incorporating that into the GIS system, so it could be a click away. Anyone can use it on an iPad or cell
Nice.
phone too, so.
Council cross-training.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, can we open this up and know how to run the water treatment plant?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Start tonight.
Training starts
Here's your
now.
pager.
Aaron, remind me, there's something that we had to fill out, some kind of survey for somebody. I can't remember who it was, but it was a lot about disaster recovery processes and procedures that we have as a city. Does it ring a bell for you? Is that the
For
ADA?
Marco?
I don't know if it was an ADA thing, because it was also about like weather emergencies, and
Oh,
it included that kind of stuff too. I remember
emergency
that.
response plan, that was.
I remember the weirdest stuff,
That
so.
was EPA, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like it was something like that.
DHS.
Yeah, there was a federal emergency response plan that we had to, that was due like a year ago that
Okay.
Chad and I worked through, but.
Yep.
I just wondered if this helped support that. That's just what it rang for me. Emergency.
Nothing, I mean, this was kind of more tailored to the utility system specifically, so.
Okay.
But as you can see, a lot of that time from Chad and his team and Aaron and his
Very
team.
cool.
But this is kind of the, I would say, the model that we want to use for developing a total emergency response plan that we budgeted for in 2023 for tornadoes, floods, et cetera, and having it in one document that's easily accessible. So wanted to share that with the council.
Very cool.
Another thing that the council is aware of that was in our strategic plan was to develop a water guide for residents that essentially show them that the system is more complex than just kind of turning on a faucet. And so providing some answers to frequently asked questions to give them an idea of how the water system runs, but to do it in a way that we thought would be more apt to be read than kind of a dictionary chapter and verse of how the system runs. And so with some help from Bolton and Mink on kind of design and colors, this was created, as you can see it on page number 5. Lynn contributed with some information on the bill and how to read your meter. And then on the back, there's some conservation tips. This is kind of, you can, for everyone, but here, remember this was a pretty big piece of our strategic plan 2 years ago, is to develop a guide that we thought would tell a better story to users about water and sewer and what they pay it and what it goes for. And so this is that work product. So looking for some feedback on the content, and then I have a question related to kind of getting it out there. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it, one as a newsletter article where you put a QR code in and it flashes up. Or Lynn did some research with our printing company. It would cost approximately $3,500 to mail a color copy of this out to every utility bill account in the city. So as far as read rates, I don't have the background to tell you which one's gonna get the biggest number of clicks, or if more people are gonna read it if they physically have it in their hands. I think ultimately it's a decision on $3,500 versus doing it for essentially for free with our newsletter article. But
I think this is great. Do I think people are gonna pour over it and read it like we are right now? I don't know that it's worth the $3,500. I think there are other ways that we can get it out there with social media and
Could you do like
the newsletter article.
divide it by 6 and do one page at a time? With some other, whether it be the social media and or newsletter?
Yeah, I think newsletters, but I mean, this is such a great reference document that anytime anybody calls in and has a question, hey, let me send you this PDF. Like,
Yeah,
hey, basic information, and I love that you included the treatment results as well in here, because it's important, right? Because people are like, oh, it's so expensive, oh, it's crappy water, whatever, No, right? And so this is just, there's a lot of great data in here. I think that it's just a great reference document.
Does water hardness vary throughout the city? We can't just put the number in here?
Throughout the city, no,
Yeah,
it should be
everyone-
relatively constant. It has changed over the last couple of years, it's increased, but it's gonna vary from city to city and depending on your water treatment process.
Well, no, it just most water softeners tell you when you put in your hardness level.
Yes, 32 to 35.
Is it blank on there?
It just says you can contact the city to get that. I just put that in there,
Yeah.
because that's a, put it in there.
Well, some of the softeners, you can go single unit at a time, some of them jump by 5, so, and it's really personal preference. If you like really soft water, you can jack it up to 40 grains of hardness or move it down to 30 depending on personal preference.
But we
I
could,
agree, electronic version, that was, I think, the way to go.
Yeah.
but we can add that,
Mhm.
or we can add that range.
Can I just ask another nitpicky? It says 2023 report on here. Is there any, and like looking at this, and maybe I'm missing it, but this seems like a really evergreen document.
Right on.
And like,
Yeah.
when I see 2023 report, I think of like annual report or a social responsibility report or something like that. So I wonder if that isn't a little
Well, page, or the treatment results, that will change on this page, so our idea would be to update this every year.
Okay, but I'm sorry, this is gonna sound more sarcastic than I intended to be. There's dates on here are all 2020.
It should be 2022. We do the consumer confidence report
Okay.
every year. It's either June 1st or July 1st it's due. So the data is always going to be
Okay,
1 year late.
so those will have to be updated then to 2022, right, in those
Yes.
results?
I mean, we can take the date off if you prefer.
I think of more all 2023 data in here, and this, I love it. It feels more like it's just a general information piece.
Yes,
to
take
me.
this off and put a date somewhere on the bottom, like when this was, what edition
Volume
this is.
1,
Yeah.
Right,
edition
yeah,
1.
it
Yeah.
just, it's here, that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just
It
take
looks
it
like
off
an annual
there.
report, or
Yeah.
like put it on the back, you know?
Yeah.
Volume 1,
Okay.
May 2023, something.
Okay.
But I like it. Well done.
Sheriff's office coverage, we talked about losing our evening deputy. I think I remarked to the council that the sheriff's office doesn't have immediate plans or doesn't have an immediate backfill for that position. I have a meeting later this week with Dana Hardy from Victoria and Mike Woleen from the commander from the sheriff's office to explore some concepts for maybe some sharing of services. So the city of Victoria is down 2 deputies, and right now, from what I understand, they don't have any daytime coverage beyond the area car. And as you know, we have daytime coverage and no evening coverage beyond the area car. So are there ways that we could partner with them to try to get some additional coverage? But then, one of the questions that I need to ask is, like, if they do get a position filled, does it go to Victoria, does it go to Carver, does it go to some other need? So we have, I think on Thursday, Dana and Victoria, Lori and Chanhassen and I meet with the sheriff on a monthly basis. I think it's the last Thursday of the month. And just talk about issues, so that's one of the questions I'll be asking is kind of what's their backfill strategy for, Carver and all other cities, and how is that going to impact us as we continue to grow and have law enforcement needs. I'm just going to keep going unless I see a question. One of the
I
things
may
that
cut you off because we're getting kind of close to time, but,
I can speed up.
okay.
So cross-department team strategy is something that I'm really excited about. We've are moving away from just departments meeting on their own and then a department meeting, and we're creating cross-department teams. So, for example, the last team that we created was our Parks team. So it's Chad Schill, Paul Schultz, Eric Madigan, Aaron Smith, Brenda Good, Natalie Meyer, and myself. So people from different parts and places within the organization all talking about parks issues. We give updates, we roundtable, we ask the question, what are we not talking about that we should be talking about? You said something?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm just, for the next item, Mr. Churchill is right
Yep.
outside, so we might want to move that to the meeting.
Yep. And then 2022 audit, Lynn and Kathy and Brenda Efta supported having Abdoin last week to do the 2022 audit and did a great job. I think it was the least amount of feedback I got from the auditors in my entire time here that I think they asked me anything other than how I was doing. So.
Nice. Wow, that's a win.
That's what success looks like.
And then,
Just kidding.
are you feeling rushed? Do you want me to push Riverside Park? Let's do that.
Yeah, and it's not that I'm feeling rushed, it's that I'm feeling I need a taper. So, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
I have
second.
a motion by Councilmember Sarah and a second by Councilmember Hirschman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.